That is my new favorite song. Good morning, everyone. My name is Darren Ng. I am the Executive Director of LAVA. Thank you for joining us this early morning here on the West Coast, although it's not so early morning for one of our panelists who's in Africa. This is obviously in celebration of this past Sunday's World Day for African Descendant and Afro-Descendants. This is part of the Global LAVA series. The Global LAVA group within LAVA is one of many groups. We have LAVA Space, we have Canna LAVA, which is on cannabis, we have Women in LAVA, we have LAVA PE, we have LAVA GOV. I could go on, but just go to lava.org and check that out, or you've already been there if you've registered for this event. So I hope you check out some of our other groups as well. Next week, if you're an investor in the audience, please join us for an event that we're having. It's an invite-only event. It's investors only. It's a syndication event in gaming. So I don't know how many people in this audience are in gaming, but if you have colleagues that are, please feel free to provide them with that information. Also, if you haven't seen the LAVA Awards, please go look at that. And if you like what you see today, please, as everybody's saying, oh, hit the button, subscribe, and join. I'm going to say go up there and hit the button and join. So that's all I have for today, and some quick commercials. This event is not only being done by LAVA Global LAVA, but we're also being done by LAVA GOV, which is also another new group within LAVA as well. And our moderator is Dillon, and he is the chair for that. But before I introduce Dillon as the moderator, I'd like to bring up Sharon Revinder, who is one of the two co-chairs of Global LAVA. She represents the Grenoble area, which is the home of a lot of technology and an interesting beverage that I recently learned about called chartreuse or chartreuse. Am I saying that right, Sharon?
You are.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Darren.
Yeah. Sharon will occasionally bless a winner when we have a high number of attendees for a particular event, especially when we do Europe or one of the French-speaking countries with the bottle of chartreuse, where many people know what that is. I'm just learning what it is now. But thank you, Sharon, for hosting Global LAVA.
Thanks, Darren. So on behalf of Michael McClune, my co-chair at Global LAVA, thanks everyone for being here. This is our second panel actually on Africa. We did one last year, and we're trying to hit many of the geographic areas that are interesting for folks from LA and vice versa. So my day job is to help people get to and from France and the United States and Canada, and I'm based in Los Angeles, of course. And so I won't take much of your time, but I encourage you all to join LAVA, go to lava.org. And thanks so much, Dillon, for putting this panel together and for moderating. And welcome welcome LAVA GOV to LAVA.
Yeah, and thank you for last night's event, actually, Sharon. We did an amazing event with some folks, experts on international trade from the city, from the World Trade Center, and from our Lacey compatriots downtown. But welcome, Dillon. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for helping to produce this panel today.
Thank you all for having me. And I'd just like to say World Day for African and Afro-Descendant culture celebrates the many vibrant cultures of the African continent and African diasporas around the world, and promotes them as effective levers for sustainable development, dialogue, and peace. A belief I hold is that culture is an effective lever for sustainable development when you build economic ties with the Africans and the Afro-Descendants, and you do that by connecting ecosystems. And to that effect, that enables us to leverage the resources that are mutually beneficial, and Global LAVA seeks to do just that. So it's an honor to host this particular event. And I'd like to say we have members from our organization, founders, funders that are interested in understanding the opportunities that are available on the continent. And additionally, we will use this event to highlight ways in which Afro-descendants in Los Angeles can engage with startups on the continent and participate in the Afro-tech renaissance. I'd like to welcome our distinguished panelists, starting with Justine Abudibong, who is a serial entrepreneur and founder of Swift, and investor in farm cart Foods Nigeria. She is also a finance strategy consultant at Deloitte. In her work, she focuses on business transformation, process improvement across government, emerging markets, and commercial sector, bringing an analytical, entrepreneurial, and global mindset to client engagement. Welcome, Justine. We also have Derek Smith, who is founder of Plug-in South LA. In addition to Plug-in South LA, he is digital marketing evangelist and branding expert by trade. Derek has worked with many leading global brands with a primary focus on digital media trends. He has developed a keen understanding for complex relationships that exist between advertisers and brands. Derek has consulted and worked with some of the world's most prominent brands, among whose number are Corbis Images, SAB Miller Breweries, the NBA, Microsoft Advertising, Nestle, Dove, Ritz Crackers, amongst others. Throughout his career, Derek has held a number of key positions, including that of Business Development Director, Brand Strategist at Young and Rubicam and Wonderman. He enjoys good food and unplanned traveling adventures, and he is also a former board member at Sustainable South Bronx. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Not a problem. Thank you for joining us. We also have Eric Aseaquan. He is managing partner of Chenzo Capital and is an entrepreneur and investor with 15 years of ICT industry leadership across Africa and the world. Eric has worked in 32 African countries, setting up ISPs, ISPAs, IXPs, and all sorts of high-tech startups. He has co-founded Angel Africa List, Angel Fair Africa, and currently serves on the board of Farmerline, SMS Ghana, amongst many other organizations. He authored Kings of Africa's Digital Economy, co-authored the Open Access Model, adopted globally by the telecommunications industry, Negotiating the Net, the Politics of Internet Diffusion in Africa, and the Internet Ghana with the Mosaic Group. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much, Dillon.
I know the time difference is something else, so we appreciate you for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.
And last but not least is Dr. Wilma Allen, who is an entrepreneur, investor, and political economist. Based in Nairobi, he is co-founder of IndigeneUS.ia, a genomics company creating the world's largest blockchain encrypted repository of indigenous and diasporic African clinical and multi-omics data for disease prevention and detection, drug discovery and development, and clinical disease management. He is venture partner with healthcare private equity funds. Wilma is also founder of Venture Lift Africa, an advisory firm and marketplace for business connections between diaspora and Africa. Prior to, Wilma led the transaction team for East Africa Trade and Investment Hub and held finance roles in emerging market private equity, tech venture capital, tech M&A, IPO, private placements, investment banking. He has degrees from Georgetown, an MBA from Wharton, an MPA from Harvard, and studied at Yale as well. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And we have an impressive lineup of panelists, and we hope you all enjoy this quite engaging discussion. And if Wilma, are you able to join us via camera?
Yes, I am.
Amazing, amazing. We have an international group of folks here, one based in Kenya, one based in Ghana, and Justine, I believe you're in DC, and Derek, you're right here in Los Angeles with me, right?
Actually, I'm in Atlanta right now.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
Not a problem, not a problem. Definitely still a pleasure to have you. I want to go ahead and kick things off. First and foremost, we know that COVID has been quite challenging for a number of us, and we've seen how it's kind of shaped the landscape for startups on the continent, which I'm sure has amazed many folks, given the number of projects that continue throughout the pandemic. But I think there's more that we can do. And given that we are recognizing Afro-descendants and the African diaspora, I would love to hear from you, Dr. Allen, about your work on issues pertaining to the diaspora. And we know that you're currently based in Kenya and you lead Venture Africa. We would like to kick this off by having you speak to us about some of the challenges that persist with connecting folks prior to the pandemic and currently with opportunities that exist on the continent.
Thank you to LAVA. I really appreciate this opportunity. I want to say hello to my friend Michael McClune and also Tracy Gray, who's part of the LAVA family. Well, listen, I think that when you talk about the challenges of engaging diaspora with Africa, COVID really didn't have anything to do with it, right? It's lack of knowledge of opportunities, lack of relationships with direct intermediaries, and lack of access to finance to actually facilitate deals. So COVID may have exacerbated those issues, but certainly COVID is not the root cause. And so I do think that we now have a lot of momentum, a lot of interest in engaging the diaspora with Africa. And I think people are finally beginning to make this connection. There has been, over the last year or so, a lot of interest in economic justice, economic empowerment of Black and Brown communities. I think finally the light is going on to say that, hey, one of the ways for structural adjustment for particularly the Black community and communities of African descent in America is through a connection economically with the continent. Let me give you an example. I have friends, middle-class friends who invest a lot in real estate or have started companies. And the amount of money that it takes to start a company in the US is probably a lot larger than it does here. And secondarily, the opportunity set in terms of where an investor, where a trade partner for export import, where a tech transfer partner in technology can engage the continent, the opportunity set is immensely larger, right? $1 million is seed capital, can be also seed capital for a manufacturing facility. And if you think about the scale of growth and that valuation over time and return on investment to that investor, there's just really no comparison. While we're not saying that it is not important to continue to build and support entrepreneurship in America, we see that it's both and. It's both that and also creating this economic bridge with Africa. And we do that through advisory, do that through our marketplace. In September, we had a great event called the Diaspora Investment Trade Deal Event, which attracted over 1,000 individuals from pension fund managers, sovereign wealth fund managers across the world, engaging on this interest and enterprise of economic engagement with the continent.
No, thank you for that. And I'm sure with all the work that you've done, it's just interesting to have someone like Derek Smith on the panel, and given his work with Plug-in South LA, whose mission is to empower, support, and advise the next generation of Black and Latinx founders. I'm just interested in hearing, Derek, what are some of the ways that your organization seeks to do just that through mentorship? And can you speak with ways in which you've connected mentees to international markets and some of the opportunities that are available here in Los Angeles to entrepreneurs and founders?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And thank you, Wilma, for sort of teeing up that. I think, yes, I think that economic justice feels a little bit more mainstream today than it felt, 10 years ago when you look at underserved and overlooked communities across the US. I started Plug-in South LA 5 years ago with the focus on supporting and nurturing, entrepreneurs in one of Los Angeles's most, overlooked communities, and that's South LA. Our vision is that in 20 years, the next Snapchat will come out of a community like South LA. But we know there's a lot of groundwork that has to be done in order for that to happen. So, we operate 3 programs. We have Accelerator program, which is going into its 2nd year. We operate power huddles, which are essentially opportunities for any stage entrepreneur to connect with the venture capitalist, investor, or tech resource provider to get guidance and information on how to scale. And we also operate the Urban Tech Connect Conference, which is the largest tech-focused conference in Southern California focused on Black and Brown founders. Look, mentorship is really key, and it's one of the ingredients to breaking down these traditional barriers that have really excluded marginalized folks from, accessing wealth creation in the marketplace. And I think entrepreneurship, specifically in tech, is an opportunity to sort of build new bridges to wealth. And, just in terms of how we sort of connect, international sort of capital to local opportunities, and then local entrepreneurs and founders to this global marketplace, I think we're starting at very, sort of what is a baseline, right? First we need to build successful entrepreneurs and successful companies that have an ability to scale, not just sort of nationally, but globally, right? And that starts with mentorship, programming, resources, capital, to make sure that you are working with a founder or entrepreneur that has something that can be global. In our accelerator cohort, this next one, we have a guy from Lagos, participating because he wants to grow his business in the U.S. And so the programming, the network, the mentoring that we're bringing to the program allows him to figure out a way to get local market expertise to, sort of crack the code of growing market share in the U.S. I would like to see more of that, right? How do we sort of build a two-way bridge? How do we get, entrepreneurs from communities like South LA or any overlooked community across the U.S., once they've cracked the code on what is the market fit for their business, how do you sort of scale that globally? And where are those networks that we need to plug into globally to help them roll out and to scale and to create economic sort of success in the marketplace?
Thank you for that, Derek. There's some keywords that you dropped on me that trigger some of my thinking around these issues are networks and ecosystems, right? And I believe, Justine in particular, I met you in Los Angeles at a networking conference, and I think here at LAVA, we seek to connect the ecosystem so that folks aren't so siloed and working in their bubbles. And we know what happens on the continent oftentimes. People work with those that you're closest with. It happens here as well. You work within your networks, and what we're seeking to do with our initiatives is expand those networks and provide access and build those bridges, as you've just mentioned, Derek. And Justine, I know for you, you've done quite a bit of moving around, and you have experience as a founder, as I'm sure others on this that are participating in this panelists do also. Could you speak to us a bit about some of how you've grown your network and how you've used your network to leverage opportunities for funding Farm Cart Foods Nigeria, and how you've also tapped into resources that have been made available through government, or that you plan to tap into that have been made available through government in order to further your goals?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Justine here. And I've been working in Nigeria since 2018. And I think same thing, like Derek mentioned, all about the network. So I'm from Togo, so kind of from the continent, but I've been in the US my whole life. And I think after my first startup, which we sold, I wanted to do more work in the continent. So I took a month off and just went back, traveled around, kind of figure out where in the space can I play best in. So from that experience, I went, hey, there's a big opportunity for agriculture on the continent. So I came back to DC and kind of just started doing my research, Googling, that's definitely a first place to start. And then just networking, telling your network, hey, I'm interested in doing work in Africa. Can you connect me with your colleagues or people who are doing work on the continent? And through that is when I found my co-founder, who is based in Lagos, who is doing work in the ag tech space. So we are a production company. So we produce both poultry products and fish products, and from start to finish. So from farming to processing, packaging, and then to the local market, as well as looking to start exporting in the next couple of years. So with that being said, came on board in 2018 at a small level, just advising. And then throughout the year, kind of build that network and expanded and help them grow from, we grew 10x in the past 3 years, just from using both my connects in the US from fundraising, because fundraising is really hard for entrepreneurs on the continent. So being able to have a team of both US based and Nigerian based, I think is what really helped our company grow so fast in the past 3 years, because you definitely need local experience. However, at the same time, we do need the access to funding, which the US can bring. And this year, last year, we actually applied for a USA grant to expand our operations, which we're currently in the process of finalizing. So I think just having that bridge, like as you mentioned, is definitely key. And I think that's what Africa, both Africans on the continent as well Africans here can play a big part of. So really excited to see where that goes in the future.
Likewise. And I'd like to just pull Eric into the conversation because he's actively working on the continent as well as Wilma. But given the leading industries on the continent that have received funding in 2020 being fintech, clean tech, health, data and analytics, and agriculture, and knowing that you have a wide array of those companies that range from those particular industries in your portfolio, it would be good to hear from you, Eric, about where investors from LA would find the most success based on industry and specific, what types of engagement Chazo Capital has had with international funders, and whether you're currently raising funds in California or in Los Angeles.
All right, thank you, Dillon, and thanks, Lava, for inviting me. This is a great panel. It's a pleasure to be on. From my perspective, so I got into investing a little bit through the back door. So I'm not an investment banker, I'm an entrepreneur, and I built a couple of companies in Africa, as you iterated, Dillon, and then I essentially rebuilt the companies that created a network infrastructure. And then we saw a new generation of entrepreneurs building an application layer. And that's how I got into investing. And as many of you may know, Africa is a very huge continent. It's 54 countries, 55 now. And so you cannot start by investing in all of them. All right. So our first thinking was which countries are leading the digital economy. And by the digital economy, we were very clear in our mind that because mobile was very pervasive in Africa, mobile was going to be a platform for people communicating, trading, doing business. So we started looking for opportunities where mobile is being used to add value or fix pain points or fix some bottlenecks or some loopholes in the marketplace. And so we looked at existing markets, and some of the innovations were in financial services, fintech. So all of you know M-Pesa, which is the basis of mobile money, and that is a very important differential from how you consume electronic transaction the West are supposed to here. And so the first iteration was to look at which countries had really sort of seen this sort of digitization, and we came up with sort of 4 countries. We call them 5 countries, called the Kings countries, which is Kenya, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. And this is somewhere around 2013. So we started focusing on investing in these countries. So our fund is actually called the Kings Fund. Over time, countries have added to that, like Egypt. If you look at the numbers for last year, Egypt came up as one of the countries that got the most investment in 2020 and some partially in 2019. So that's North Africa. So it's great to see that you have nexuses all across the continent. You have other countries like Zambia, Tunisia, that are also becoming very interesting hotspots for innovation and for investment. Tanzania, another country. So our first focus was look at those countries where there's a lot of innovation and opportunities, and then we kind of then ask ourselves, then which sectors are we seeing the most interesting innovations? And you mentioned some of this. So fintech is one of them. Ag tech. Justine mentioned ag. So we look at ag, but we look at it with a technology lens. So we look for ways which entrepreneurs are using tech, tech in agriculture, because predominantly most of Africa's economy is predominantly agrarian. So Justine, you're absolutely right, and going to that sector, adding value, and a lot of the agrarian products, there's no value add. We just export them. Like Ghana and Ivory Coast represents majority of the cocoa production in the world, but we don't have any cocoa factories here. We produce very little chocolate. So the cocoa goes out and then comes back 500 times the price because we just didn't add value, right? So we believe that there's a very concurrent manufacturing, revolution that has happened along the continent. In addition to sort of the tech revolution that has happened. And if you look at it, tech actually can make manufacturing, add more value to manufacturing, can give you better access to networks. Today you can, manufacture using much more lighter technology, 3D printing, and a lot of ways where we can add value to production using technology. And so the key thesis for us is that we look for how technology is being used to fix very critical challenges that have mass scale across the continent, right? And so you back an entrepreneur and then you look at that problem that you're solving and think about how can you create scale? Is it a problem that is sort of massively across Africa? And if there's a case that we go in, because we believe that, you know, whilst Africa is not homogeneous, like, you know, the US and other parts of the world, you still need to think about scale when investing in Africa, because the markets are relatively small, but together they are really big, right? And so sort of one of the things that have become a very front line for us now is the common market. You know, I guess you've been following that. You know, last year, the 54 African countries created this common market, which is now the biggest trading bloc on the planet. You know, valued at $3 trillion. You know, so for us, we look at that aspiration. I want to back entrepreneurs that want to go into that market and capture a significant part of that market. And so for people who are looking to invest, you know, to conclude, you know, your question, people who are looking to invest in Africa, my first advice is look for people who are doing stuff and begin to figure out ways in which you can partner with them, co-invest in them. We are a classic GPLP fund. So, you know, if you're looking for a fund to use as a vehicle, we're in the market. We've closed our fund one. Our fund one is now at a 10x over 5 years. And then, you know, we're in the process of now getting a new fund, which is focused on scale, up and running. So those are some of the avenues to engage.
Thank you, Eric. And we're going to put a pin on that African Continental Free Trade Agreement because I think it's critical that we discuss that. Dr. Allen, I want to come back to you. And I know we've had a number of conversations since I first met you probably a year or two ago up in the Bay Area. You were very passionate about a number of things, including where government needs to place their focus in order to get this thing right. And in my work with Representative Bass, we push the needle on Africa with a focus on AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunities Act. We understand that no one develops in the dark, so Power Africa has been something that we focused on through PPP, private-public partnerships, especially with companies here in the States, and identifying those opportunities in which they could help scale and build out grids on the continent. We see that landscape shifting and changing with decentralized technologies. And now we have Prosper Africa under the Trump administration. Could you speak to some of the opportunities that you believe exist with the initiatives that have been introduced so far and your critiques of some of those programs that have been put in place?
Thank you, Dillon. First of all, I think it's important to acknowledge the initiative that the U.S. government has taken to strengthen its ties with Africa, whether it's the State Department, Commercial Service, Department of Commerce. Americans are working hard to do better at that. And so I want to say that and acknowledge that and also congratulate those who are involved in that. Having said that, to answer your question, look, I think you have to break it down by policy initiative. With the AGOA, I think the big challenge is to get more SMEs involved, right? And that has been a capacity issue. It's been a compliance issue in terms of meeting the standards that regions of the world like North America and Europe have in terms of export-import standards. I think also when you look at initiatives like Power Africa, it's been leveraging co-investment, right? You can't have just a few companies really at the forefront of infrastructure investment. It has to be more of a broader syndicate. And so I think notwithstanding that, I think a lot of good has been done. But I think overall, and when it comes to the case of something like the Prosper Africa initiative, and I think this is a broader encouragement, I'll put it that way, is that we have to get, when it comes to these policy initiatives, sociology right. What do I mean by that? Let me talk about that on two levels. One, in terms of how diaspora are defined. Basically, in terms of the way the U.S. engages diaspora, Justine and Eric would be considered diaspora, whereas Darren and I would not be. And so we have to reconcile how the historical diaspora are part of that. And there's a reason for that. I think part of it is a complicated conversation as to why that is the case. And I think secondly, the second aspect of sociology is corporate America, has made a lot of progress, right? Investment banking, financial services has been the prodding of a lot of institutions like the Robert Twigel Foundation there with you guys. in Northern California and others. But what they have done that we don't do as well, I think, with our government policy and the institutions is corporate America say that we have a diversity problem, whether it's race, gender, what have you. So let's go to where these people are and be intentional about recruiting. Let's go to Morehouse. Let's go to Spelman. Let's go to National Black MBA Association and get better. And we've seen that progress over time. Whereas I think the US government seems to be misguided in terms of how to do that. And so we don't see that diversity. And the way sociology works against, I think, the broader engagement of the diaspora, including historical diaspora, is that when you have mostly white institutions, leadership, the decision-making around money, procurement, and on the ground in terms of who interacts with Africa, that is problematic if you are really serious about having an institution that looks like America, to quote Joe Biden. We don't have that right now. And so we know from sociology, some of the ways in which we have to prove it, that if you don't have diverse asset owners and those making decisions who represent diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds, you're going to get the result that's not diverse. That is why, and I applaud this, so many women like Tracy Gray and others have said, look, in order to get more capital to female founders, we need to have more women making investment decisions and being asset managers. We don't have that yet, and that's where we have to go. We need to, in fact, have a provision, for example, with Prosper Africa, $500 million, taxpayers from the Black community, both historical and contemporary diaspora, ought to have some sort of a special allocation that the government supports for economic engagement, so that we are not competing with all other Americans, because we know history. And we also know that those initiatives and policy vehicles are funded by taxpayer money. And so this should not be a Black issue. It should be a concern of our international community. We saw something very clearly over the last year. When there is a diversity of voices and a diverse coalition calling for change, it happens faster, as opposed to just the group that's primarily seen as the victims, i.e. Black Americans have now been joined by other Americans in advocating for civil rights. Women have been joined, and there's a lot more work to do by men in advocating for more gender equality. And so that's my answer to that. The good news is, I think with this new administration, I just read the Biden-Harris administration policy on diaspora engagement. And I think that that's a start. Obviously, it has to be followed by real program, real action. I think the first part of it is the coalition building has to happen between the private sector and the public sector in America. This broad-based that engages both contemporary and historical diaspora. And this is the last thing I'll say. The biggest advocate for this has to be the people of Africa. When we have, like following the lead of Ghana and the president of Ghana, other nations, other government leaders, the private sector saying we want to engage the diaspora more broadly, where it's both and, it's not exclusive, it's both and to do that is not supporting a false equivalence, Black empowerment equals anti-white. No, that's not it at all. When Africa is stronger, the world is stronger. When Black and brown communities in America are stronger, America is stronger. And so I think that's where we have to go, taking into account sociology, taking into account the importance of demystifying what some of these policies are, and then on the policy level, making sure that we are getting more SMEs involved and there are more co-investment coming from a variety of financial institutions, including those controlled by people of the African diaspora.
Thank you, thank you. Derek, I don't want to let those points just fly. He hit on a number of issues, including diversity. I know Plug in South LA has put South LA in particular under a microscope as to what needs to be done to ensure that there's a level of diversity and inclusion within the startup spaces. So if you could speak to how you all have done outreach to individuals from Black and brown communities, and we can kind of tie that to the larger goal of helping folks understand ways in which you ensure that underserved or marginalized populations are involved in this process.
All right, so is the question, how have we driven awareness among the community or built those relationships among Black and Brown founders to bring them into our ecosystem?
And the corporate community as well.
Sure. Really, it's not rocket science by any stretch. It's all been purely programmatic. I think before we started the work, there, in talking with sort of folks on the West Side about South LA, and we need to be part of LA's innovation boom because there's so much wealth being created, but it's all happening around South LA. Come with me, come sort of like make this happen. People were just really standoffish and didn't see South LA as a market or a place where innovation could even happen in the short term or long term, right? So, sort of working around these barriers that people have mentally, what we did was just programmatically bring people into South LA to have these conversations to prove that Black folks, poor folks, brown folks want to make money and want to be at the cutting edge of innovation, right? And so through our programming, we managed to rally the community and stakeholders around the city to really pay more attention, right? And then also working with local organizations in the community strategically to target and bring in the right folks to create the magic that we're trying to create. So programmatic is really the way it goes, and then also hitting every sort of like stakeholder, right? Hitting them up from, philanthropic to corporate to ecosystem builders, in and around LA, making sure that those people are at the table and we're aware of the focus and the mission that we're trying to sort of hit home on. So it's been really grassroots in terms of getting people involved. And I think we're really still very early stage and touching the surface in terms of what we're really trying to accomplish. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I mean, I think to go beyond that, I know in specific, women can experience those same challenges. And I would like to come to Justine and just highlight ways in which you as an African woman in the diaspora, an entrepreneur, someone that is actively working to raise money for a company, some of the challenges that you've experienced with breaking the glass ceiling, if you will, and how that's led you to organizations like Farm Cart NG and helping you all with achieving your goals.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to piggyback on what Derek said. I think the biggest thing is, awareness. I think having people actually come to the continent. I know Gov't did a great job of this 2019 for the Diaspora Year of the Return. So I think as we get more people on the continent and on the ground, I think that experience changed a little bit, because I feel like we all have this vision or mind of like Africa in the old days. And I think like a lot of things have changed since then. I think Nigeria is like this scary place, but Lagos is definitely way more, super modern, depending on where you're staying. So I think definitely getting people more on the continent as we go forward will be a big push towards bridging that gap. So, and then for me as a woman, and I think it depends. I'm pretty much a risk taker. I started a company before, sold it. So I think for me, also being from the continent, me going back wasn't a really big deal for me because I'm used to that kind of risk and being on the continent. But I think definitely, having partnerships. My co-founder is a guy, and he's mostly on the farm while I'm mostly focused on fundraising and strategy. So I think having those bridges is also a really big important piece of it going forward. So I think the main thing, definitely continue to focus on, again, mentorship, networking, connecting the diaspora with the locals in Africa is, I think, where we need to focus on going forward. So, which is, I'm doing that. I'm really big on, I hosted a conference in LA in 2019 to do this. So I think being a woman, I think it's just my risk level is a little bit different than most people. So I'm pretty comfortable with it. But again, I think it's because having that ecosystem and that team that is behind me and alongside me as we grow.
Thank you.
Can I add something to that? I think awareness is very key. I was really fortunate enough to travel to Kenya in 2013, and I was able to sort of like see different parts of Nairobi, and I went into some of the just really pockets of where some of the startup sort of hubs are there, and I was really blown away by sort of the amount of innovation happening in Nairobi, and leaving that trip with sort of like this thought that still sits with me today is that how do we bridge this gap, right? Because I think a lot of countries in Africa have an advantage to leapfrog a lot of Western countries, leveraging where technology has brought us today. And I feel like that opportunity in and of itself creates a lot of opportunity for folks on the continent, as well as sort of stakeholders and ecosystem builders that want to sort of plug into that, you know, on a continent-wide basis. So I think there needs to be more, you know, government-led and corporate-led sort of initiatives in our communities that facilitate more awareness through seeing and understanding how these markets are evolving and growing over time, and how we all can play a role in sort of building sustainability and fair trade and the things that I think we all care about when you look at how markets become interconnected, right?
Thank you for that, Derek. And I want to go to Eric before we open it up for Q&A from the audience. And Eric, I know with your work, you've been faced with a number of issues, and I know funders face this as well. And with what we have here, just thinking of the tale of two cities, right? Kings, we're talking about Kenya, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and specifically looking at a story of how you would tell the kid from South Los Angeles that wants to, that is an entrepreneur that would want to partner with an organization in South Africa. The kid from South Los Angeles going to South Africa and saying, listen, I want to establish technical partnerships. We want to attract the funding. We want to be engaged with the work that you all are doing here. How do you go about doing that and demystifying what those opportunities look like?
Well, one way of looking at it is just looking at what the return profiles are like in Africa. So 10 years ago, Africa was selling the promise, right? Africa Rising, you name it. There was a lot of sort of interest in Africa. So let's look at what the numbers are like 10 years down the line. So I'll give you 3 case studies. The first is in a company in Ghana called Zipe. So in 2015, 2 investors invested $24,000 in Zipe. They exited last year, December, at $940,000 exit. And that is roughly about 3,800% return on their investment in 5 years. Right, so that's one. The second is the early investors in a company called Iroko TV. So Iroko is like, you know, the Netflix of Africa, started in Nigeria by my good friend Jason Njoku. The early investors in Iroko who put in, who were sort of 10% shareholders and put in about $80,000 in the first 5 years. They made a return of 3,000% when they sold their shares at a secondary sale for $2.4 million. Right. So if you look at these return profiles, yes, you know, one way of looking at Africa is, yes, Africa is very risky, but the return profiles are outrageous. And so what is interesting to see is that the first 10-year cycle has come full. And you see these also in some of the unicorns that have been created. For example, we all know of Jumia. I don't know if you look at the latest trading of Jumia shares, but it's now about $5 billion in valuation. InterSwitch also became a unicorn last year, and so did Fowry in Egypt. Fowry listed actually on the Egyptian stock exchange, and Fowry was started by 2 Egyptian entrepreneurs. And over 10 years, they actually grew this business and listed it on the stock exchange, and last year became a unicorn. And so essentially what you begin to see now is that the 10-year cycle has come around, and you begin to see exit profiles that are really interesting. And so for investors that want to look at Africa, you need to start paying attention to the fact that Africa is standing the curve. It's no more selling the promise, but we begin to see interesting results, interesting exits. And we're going to see more of that in this decade. Now, for entrepreneurs who want to look into coming into Africa, yes, the opportunity is there, and there's so many opportunities. But you need to look at how you partner with locals, because there's a lot of nuances and there's a lot of detail that even as an investor, you may think that I can just fly in and fly out, and you miss it. Actually, if you look at the PE returns on Africa, a lot of the PE funds that invested in Africa in the last decade, a lot of them were investing in Africa by flying in. A lot of them sit in London or New York and they fly in. And if you look at some of those return profiles, they weren't as interesting as what you're seeing now in the VC space. Obviously, VC is much more risky. Private equity is, relatively less risky. But the point I'm trying to make is that, for example, Justine's approach, which is partnering with a local who is on the farm, who is doing all the legwork and knows how the local nuances work, while she flies in and out and she goes around raising money and doing the marketing and doing the sales, is one way to go. So if you're looking to come into the continent, this one strategy. And then that is obviously to invest in a local entrepreneur who may be very good locally, but doesn't have the international chops, right? And then you come in and say, look, I have global experience. I can help, sell the business or sell our product to corporates. I have those experiences. And so that's another way to go. A third way really is that also the opportunities where the businesses that have been built in the US and in Europe that may see Africa as a market. For example, a company called Clipper, started by Ghanaians in San Francisco, recently raised, I think the biggest raise, I can't remember the amount now, but the plan is to now expand that business into Africa, right? And so now they started hiring African teams and begin to get boots on the ground and begin to expand into the continent. Because the reality is that Africa is going to be the biggest market, right? So there's going to be a lot of businesses that come out of here to the rest of the world, but also the businesses out there that may be coming into Africa for purposes of expansion and capturing the pace of the action.
So Dillon, may I chime in on that before we go to Q&A? It'll take 30 seconds.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one thing I want to say, in addition to what Justine and Eric have said, I think those models are great from the firm level, but also from the investor level. Eric and I are friends, and he has been one of the pioneering forces here in angel investing. And so what we're looking to do also is connect angels on both sides of the Atlantic and cross-border as well. Because it works the same way when you have local investors who understand the local economies, the risk, how to mitigate them, but can syndicate a larger pool of investment into the continent. And by the way, for two-way trade going in both directions, that's really a plus factor as well. We don't see as much of that as we see it being driven by firms, but now I think, for those who are interested in investing as individuals, as angels, we definitely are here to help you and can show you the way to kind of connect with counterparts who have had success.
No, that was great insight, and I appreciate you all for sharing. Now, I just want to go to a question from one of the attendees. This is for anyone who would like to answer, but it's focused on healthcare. And the question is, how would you describe the healthcare system on the continent in terms of payments? Is it fee-for-service, value-based, or mixture?
I'll start. So the healthcare system in general is fragmented and largely broken in the sense that the systems that Westerners may be used to in terms of the way payments are made, service delivery, et cetera, are in development here. And insurance doesn't cover much of the expenses. There's a push in many countries, including here in Kenya, for universal health insurance. Of course, there's that push in America as well. So that's not unfamiliar as a challenge for many countries. But oftentimes the payments are subsidized through development finance institutions. And so healthcare is still largely dependent upon the development system as opposed to investment capital. And so you see that play out in a lot of the innovation now is to disrupt that, to bring in diaspora money, for example, to pay for pharmaceuticals, for medicines, et cetera, to bring in blockchain for ways to manage AI, for ways to manage data, to make it cheaper for individuals now to actually pay. But broadly speaking, it's still subsidized.
And if I may add to that also, is that because there's a lot of challenges in the healthcare system, we're seeing a lot of innovation in that space. And actually, COVID really was a plus. You know, we've seen entrepreneurs who are basically doing rapid diagnostic testing in Ghana, in Senegal, in Sierra Leone, in a few countries. I'm involved in a company called Serenity that essentially allows you to book, you know, the PCR test and then show up, and you pay online. And when you show up, you just go take the test, and then the results are sent to you through the Serenity system. So we begin to see a lot of innovation in that space. And I think that COVID is pushing the needle. There's more investments going in that space. Generally, healthcare is hard. You know, it's not a very sexy sector, so it's edtech. But interestingly, one of the positives of COVID that has made the non-sexy sector has become very interesting. We invested in a company called eCampus. And eCampus is an edtech startup that, you know, took us a long time to get the schools, the government to adopt using eCampus as a platform. Guess what? Come COVID, the government was calling us and say, hey, we want to use your system, we want to get in everywhere because now everybody's at home and we need a system for them to use, right? So I'm trying to conclude, you know, in this, in answering that, if you look at COVID in Africa, NetNet, I actually wrote an op-ed on this on my Harvard blog, which I'll put in the link in a second, where I primarily said that NetNet, COVID has had a positive impact in Africa in the sense that it's really enhanced certain sectors, and it's really brought out opportunities that were not paid attention to before. For example, e-commerce, electronic transactions. In Nigeria, the latest numbers was that during COVID last year, the electronic transactions went up by 42% compared to 2019. In Ghana, I think the latest numbers about account statistical service is going to release the numbers next week, but I'm sure to be probably more than that. So more and more people are using electronic services. People are getting innovative with tech and getting using tech in what they do. So COVID is really net sort of having a positive push in Africa.
Perfect. Thank you. Darren, I see you back on the screen. Let's go to Derek real quick, and then we'll turn the show back over to our executive director, Darren Ng.
I'm going to have to jump off. I just wanted to say it's very an honor to be on this panel with you all, and I look forward to reconnecting with you individually after this and staying in touch.
Derek, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you all over there at Plug-in South LA.
Appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, Derek. I actually was going to reiterate some of the things you had to say, so I appreciate you being here, and I've sensed that same effort. I have a project going in South LA, and I think the awareness is definitely a key factor in the challenges in South LA. There's a lot of potential there, and I think we just need to make more and more people aware that it actually is.
Well, baby steps.
Doing a great job.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. You all have a great weekend. Look forward to talking to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you, Derek.
All right.
We had another Q&A pop up. I'm going to look to see. Someone was emailing me in the background here, and I don't see that it has popped up. Huh. Not a new one. But I just wanted to jump in, and as I commented about Derek's comments, I think Justine really hit it on the head with regard to you really hit it on the head with regard to the fact that I experienced the same thing going to Southeast Asia and in China. I think the United States really not only the general populace, but really smart, intelligent people who are making very important decisions are clueless as to what's happening in the rest of the world. The technology advances that, I was shocked to get to Jakarta and realize they had 7 forms of Uber when we only had 2. We only had Uber and Lyft, and you could get 7 different types of rides, and at a push of a button, it was much faster, it was more efficient, it was unbelievable, and getting around to different places. And I think, where we've had to go mobile, a lot of the mobile technologies have helped leapfrog the mobile in most other countries and my understanding from my research of Africa, I haven't been there yet, but I think we need some more media coverage of what it's like in places for people who are sitting back, couch potatoes, that that's their only reach for what it looks like in another country. They need realistic understanding of what the actual life on the ground is in these places.
Yeah, for sure, sure.
Thank you for that. I think we've got one more question, and then what I want to do is go ahead and wrap up the panel to be respectful of everyone's time. And that question is, in African medical centers and practitioners, where can the available funds in the range of 30K to 40K when they want to enhance their capacity by integrating new technological interventions in clinical practices? I'm not sure I understand.
I'll start with that one really quickly. So there's a new initiative on the continent headed by the Africa CDC, and they've raised a lot of money for healthcare, strengthening healthcare systems in general, but they make grants. So the short answer is here, grant money, Africa CDC, the foundations, but also check out sites like globalinnovationfund.org or .com. It's largely going to be concessional capital. There are family offices now that are committing support like that as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And before we conclude, are there any parting words that you all would like to share with our attendees?
I can go. Well, I mean, obviously, we're always fundraising. So if you're interested, definitely contact me afterwards. We play more in the ag tech space. So definitely a large opportunity there to expand, both looking at other countries as well to expand into. So definitely open to having those conversations if anyone is interested.
I'll jump in as well. I think we're all going to make a similar call here. But the RH Family Funds, healthcare, private equity, raising 100 million, about halfway there. Indigenous AI is a genomics company that I think is going to be a really great, make a great contribution to Africa startup. So we're seeking capital there as well. Thank you.
Eric, would you seek your capital?
Sure, go ahead.
No, I'm turning it over to you.
No, sure. I'm going to basically conclude by kind of saying that, look, this is the most important time to take Africa seriously in terms of the next global innovation center and also the biggest market on the planet. So, once we sort of have COVID and vaccines and people can travel again, the best thing is to try and come on the continent and experience it. It's a very interesting experience that I definitely would encourage you to invest without visiting the continent. So try and make a trip out there. So Darren, when you're ready, COVID permitting, we'd like to host you down here.
Thank you.
We'll bring along some LAVA members and that type of stuff.
Justine, Dr. Allen, Eric, Derek has left us already, but want to shout out all of our panelists into Global LAVA, Noel, Michael McClune, Sharon, Darren Ang for participating in our meetings, and Sully, thank you all so much for helping to pull this thing together. We appreciate all of the attendees, and we hope you all join us again for another discussion.
Right.
Thank you, Lava.
I'll take us out of here with my usual summary of what I heard, or the bits and pieces from, I think Eric gave us some great return profiles, which I really appreciate. That's fantastic for our audience to understand. Find ways to partner, find ways to add value, have technologies that add value. I think I already commented on Justine's about understanding what Africa is like today. And here we need to have, as Dr. Wilma had mentioned, we need to have diverse asset managers if you want to find diverse founders. But I will close the discussion here on what I feel is the most powerful statement that was made today. And look, this is we didn't even touch on the fact that how much China is investing in Africa right now. But I think they recognize the significance of what I'm about to say, and that is that Dr. Wilma mentioned, when Africa is stronger, the world is stronger. And I think that's a really powerful message to go out on. So thank you all the panelists for joining us today. Thank you in the audience. I think I'm going to add another shout out to one of our sponsors, Monica Cooper from Boston Private Bank. Thank you all. Check out the LAVA Awards. Check out our upcoming events. If you are an investor, please reach out to me. We will be having a number of invite-only private events for investors only. So let me know that you're interested and make sure I get you on the list. And thank you all. Have a great day. We'll go back out with who's yelling now, because I can't get over Janet Yellen. I hope that she's focused a little bit on, I know that she's more focused on domestic issues, but I hope that we were able to reach her too. And in her fiscal policies help to understand that when Africa is stronger, the world is stronger. So thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darren.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you, Sharon, as well. And thank you, Dillon.